In our last discussion, we talked about three different views that atheists have about morality, about what is right and what is wrong. Atheists don't all agree, as we said before. They have various views on this subject. The argument for the existence of God is called the morality argument, and it's comprised of two premises and a conclusion. The first premise says, if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Premise 2 says, objective moral values and duties exist. And then the conclusion is, therefore, God exists. Now, of those three things, those three elements, the first one, the first premise, there are two primary arguments that atheists raise against premise 1. So I want to talk about those. The first argument is probably the most popular. It's naturalism that we talked about before. And as you remember, it says moral values and duties don't exist. They're an illusion because science can't observe them. There's something we make up in order not to kill each other, in order for the culture to survive. But human morals are no better than the morality of any other species. Richard Dawkins said, there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good. We are machines for propagating DNA. It is every living object's sole purpose for being to propagate the DNA. Now that's a pretty morbid view of things, but it's his view. It's what he believes, and he is a scientist. He's quite an accomplished scientist and the most well-known atheist in the world. But Mr. Dawkins, I believe, is mistaken. Now, according to surveys, most scientists are naturalists. So they have this view that moral values and duties don't exist at all. They're just an illusion because we can't observe them with our senses. We can't see them or feel them or touch them. They are abstract. One thing I would say in response to that view is we need to ask some questions. If right and wrong is just an illusion, and if moral duties are just something we created out of whole cloth for the survival of our species, is anything morally unacceptable? That's something to consider. Now, if I were to place a little baby on a table in front of you and take a large machete and chop it up into little tiny pieces, would you really say that there's nothing wrong with that? Do you really believe that there's nothing wrong with that? I find that hard to accept myself. I believe there is definitely a moral element to that. But some naturalist will look you straight in the eye and will say, well, personally, I can't agree with what you did. It bothers me, but I can't say that it's right or wrong to chop up that baby. If you say that, I think most people would disagree with you. I think you'd find yourself in a minority, that most people would say there is something wrong with that. If I torture and kill a little child in front of you, would you really say that there's nothing wrong with that? Is that really possible? I don't believe it is. I believe there is a moral sense that all of us are given, that we all have, that we all share. And sometimes we call that a conscience. But there's this abstract element that you can't quite place your finger on, but you know in your gut that this is right and this is wrong. And so the conclusion that I have is that the simplest and most elegant explanation for why we have this moral sense. See, the question is, where did it come from? And why it's there, I believe, is because there is a moral lawgiver. When you talk about Occam's razor and the simplest explanations possible, well, the simplest and most elegant explanation is that God inserted that into us, into our nature as people, and that we are born with a sense of right and wrong. Premise one of the moral argument, I think, is not defeated by naturalism's view that there is no right or wrong, that right or wrong is an illusion. I don't think that's a good counter to the premise that we started off with. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. I believe the premise holds and is true.
Proclaim the glory of the Lord, make known his mighty deeds to all, take up the call, let every nation know. He is our Messiah, our Savior and our King, let all our voices join